This is Michigan Matters with Carol Cain.
And we're pleased to welcome Representative Haley Stevens, who is from Rochester Hills and representing the 11th District. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, last time I saw you was down at the auto show, and we were talking about cars and manufacturing. We're going to talk a little bit about this here, but you're over 100 days now into your new job, and I guess my first question is, how is it going?
Well, it's just been incredible. It's a sincere privilege and honor to represent Michigan's 11th District, all of our wonderful communities, Birmingham, Michigan, where I grew up and graduated high school, down to Canton, Plymouth, and Livonia. It's certainly a new moment in the nation's capital. I was honored to get my committee assignments on House Education and Labor and the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and we've been hard at work. I've already been able to propose 2 bills. We've voted kind of in a united way to end the corruption in Washington, as well as start making the government work for people again, bringing the people's voice back in.
If I were to say to you, write a headline about your first 100-plus days there, what would it be?
I think it'd be exuberant freshman is overjoyed to be in Congress and representing the people who she adores.
You also are the first millennial that Michigan has sent to Congress. And is age and your age an advantage or disadvantage from your standpoint?
Well, look, I think what we saw in the 2018 election is that people wanted to restore trust. They wanted to restore the checks and balances. They wanted to see their taxpayer dollars working for them, kind of ending the chaos and confusion. I'm all about good governance and practical governance, common sense. And for me, it's all about our innovation economy, our manufacturing economy, and that's what fuels my motivation every day in the nation's capital.
What's been the biggest challenge for you so far?
You know, we don't get as much time as you would think to forge those relationships. So every time I'm on the House floor, you know, it's a very personal thing. You know, I'm voting for my district, I'm voting for the people I represent, and then I'm reaching across, trying to, you know, form new relationships, get to know my colleagues on either side of the aisle. There's a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of expertise, a lot of different backgrounds represented, and those relationships matter. That's the elixir of governing and good legislation. So carving out that time. I also joined the congressional gym. So spending my mornings there with my colleagues, getting in a good workout, and then starting the day has been very important to the work that we're doing.
As I mentioned at the start of the show, 10 years ago, you were part of the Obama administration when they had the auto task force, part of the bailout, helping the auto companies get back on their feet. The industry has gone through a total metamorphosis here. And earlier this year, when I was with you down at the auto show, you were with your Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and others. And I know with Bill Ford. I know we're running a picture of the 3 of you down at the show here. How do you think the auto industry is doing as we sit here in 2019?
Well, let me say this. How lucky are we to have Congresswoman Dingell in the role that she is in, particularly carrying her husband's legacy forward? I was working with her 10 years ago when we were certainly in an unprecedented time. I mean, you couldn't write it. The largest drop in automotive sales in the history of the automobile at the end of 2008, the insurance industry, banking, housing, and yet our industrial base was staring at a cliff. And we banded together. It wasn't about, you know, what side you're on. It was, how do we make something different? How do we do this better for people? And now what we did from this large-scale investment is 10 years later, we see a booming automotive industry. We've got a lot of research and development happening here, and we are so proud of our automotive companies, the large ones and our suppliers. They've stuck to their knitting. They've diversified when they've needed to. They've kept a great and talented workforce here, and it's really quite remarkable.
And I know a big part of what you're looking out for is the manufacturing industry, too. In fact, you're back in the district on Mondays with your Manufacturing Mondays, yeah. I think you call them, where you go and you visit manufacturers. And what are you learning or gleaning as you go around your district talking with these companies?
Well, it's a priority for me. I've already done over a dozen of them. And what the purpose of it is to go in, particularly with our small and mid-sized manufacturers, peel behind the curtain, get a sense of what's going on there, what their needs and opportunities are, talk to their workforce, forge those collaborations, and come up with some legislation if there's a need or an opportunity to do so.
And we're going to continue the conversation, pay a few bills, and talk a little bit more about the situation in Washington as it relates to Detroit, this auto industry, and much more. But we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more Michigan Matters right after this. we're back and talking with Representative Haley Stevens, who was part of November's Pink Wave, which saw more women elected here in Michigan and around the country. And so having more women in Congress, how do you think that will change the dynamics of getting things done?
Well, there's certainly a new sense of collegiality. It's great to have so many women, so many moms. We've elected the most middle-class Congress in history, the most number of people who have children attending public schools and in school, and it's just really kind of neat. It's a new moment, and you pinch yourself walking down to the floor or in the halls of Congress, and it's, you know, someone who you're having a nice dialogue with. They seem like they could be your girlfriend, but yet they're your colleague. They're also a member of Congress.
You also have great experience in Washington, having worked in the administration, but this is your first time in Congress. There's been so much conversation about this issue of civility and lack thereof, particularly in Washington. How have you found that?
You know, I think that there's sometimes stories that don't get written, the quieter things where you really have formed a relationship with someone. There's a lot of caring and concern. We certainly saw that during Mr. John Dingell's funeral and during that time. And on the other hand, we've got to remember that we're all there to serve the country. Democracy can be a big discourse. It can be messy sometimes, but at the end of the day, the American people are counting on us. They don't often have the luxury to read into every nuance or debate, but they want us to come together for everybody. It's kind of some of the old adages, and we saw it come about during our orientation period, where people brought their children, their significant others, you know, their spouse, and we all kind of got to know each other before we took that oath. That's 85 new members of Congress, Carol, really forging a bond because they were joining this body together in a moment for getting things done.
And speaking of getting things done, I know education is another issue that you are particularly advocate about. And you were part of the conversation and a meeting with Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, who hails from Michigan, from Grand Rapids, west side of the state. And you were doing a pretty interesting time asking her questions, grilling her on things. How do you think she has done as Education Secretary and in answering your questions?
I don't think she's serving us well, and in fact, I think she's failing us. And it's really concerning when you take what's happened in Michigan based on some of her policies. Right now, we've got the metrics to show it. We're the lowest in proficiency growth. We know our students are our future. We know we have incredible public schools, but yet we have been taking money that's supposed to go to our public schools, to our teachers, to our students, siphoning them off. And really, the metrics show some of these charter schools, they've never been open, they've been corrupt, they haven't been hitting their standards. And so what we want to do is we want to put our teachers, our educators at the forefront. We want a student-first agenda. And frankly, for me, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get on that education committee. I said, I'm here for every teacher. I'm here for our amazing public schools, and also so that we can start to see some of the reinvestment that we need.
In fact, you're a graduate of Home High School,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Do you go back there very often?
We get back. I had my in-district swearing in there. I had one of my English teachers who joined us for the in-district swearing in, Robin Moten, and you know, some of the administrators are certainly new, but I'm a very proud Maple and a proud graduate, and you know, that's what I remember every day when I'm out there. Look, roughly 20% of our district is under the age of 18. They can't vote for me yet, but yet they're counting on me to get a job done. Safety, the gun violence, you know, getting into good schools, on-ramps to opportunity. We want that equality. We want something for everyone. That's the agenda we want to see, and we don't want it top down. We want it bottom up.
The other thing you're involved with is an offshoot of education manufacturing is STEM, and it was one of the bills that you introduced. You mentioned you introduced a couple of them. What's the expectation for you? People introduce bills, but do they make it all the way through the pipeline into becoming reality? What's your thought about that?
Well, I'm very excited about my first bill, the Building Blocks of STEM Act, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. Some people like to add in the A, which I'm all enthusiastic about as well, for art and the creativity. This bill was proposed in a bipartisan way with my colleague, Dr. Jim Brayard from Indiana. He represents the Purdue area, so we got two Midwesterners on the bill, two different sides of the aisle, but it was also bicameral. And so it was introduced in the Senate in a bipartisan way as well. So I've spent time on the phone with Senator Gary Peters about this, asking his advice, because he remembers what it was like to be in the House of Representatives not too long ago. The other thing I'm doing is the work of legislating. I spend that time on the House floor in committee committee meetings, talking to my colleagues about this legislation, talking to my chairman, making sure that we're going to get it marked up and get it to the floor and get that vote passed.
One of the, you referenced the late Congressman John Dingell. One of the things he told me, this is years and years ago in Washington, he had won again, and this is, he was not running for re-election for some years still to go here, and he was out having a fundraiser at 7:30 in the morning, and I said, why are you having this at 7:30? He said, this is the worst part of running for Congress. You are constantly fundraising. I know the figures came out recently, and you're near the top of raising monies here. Is that a harder challenge to do than you thought that was going to be?
Well, I've got a lot of energy, and there's certainly a lot of energy around what we're doing in Washington. And I'm so proud to have grassroots support, people from all over Michigan's 11th district, from the top of our district, White Lake, Highland, Milford. We're hearing and getting support from people all the way down to, some of our other communities. And it's a chance to bring people together. Look, we're all a little frustrated. This is why our first bill in the new Congress, H.R. 1, was to kind of rein in some of the outside spending, some of the dark money in politics. I'm all about bringing the voice of the people to the table. But the thing is that we have elected the most middle-class Congress in history. Something in our system allowed us to do that. Now, sure, it's not everyone's favorite part of the job, but I'm here to do the work.
There we go. Well, Representative Stevens, thank you so much for being here. Truly appreciate it. We'll have you back talking about things, and maybe next time you'll be able to stick around for the roundtable. We'll do that
Count
another
me
time.
in, Carol.
All right. Definitely plan on that. So speaking of the roundtable, we're back with the roundtable right after this.